Okay, so my name's Liana Holmberg. I'm also known as Liana Linden in Second Life. And is it okay if I start? Okay. Thank you. I am a program manager, and I work on the open source initiative. So that includes both the open source program and community part of our project, as well as licensing issues, and then internal and external evangelism and all kinds of things, lots of different hats. I've been at Linden for 2 years. Linden Lab is the company that makes Second Life. And I'm here to talk to you about what's going on in our open source project and where it's all going from here. So Second Life is a 3D online virtual world that uses streaming technologies to interconnect people from all around the globe in an immersive three-dimensional environment that's all in real time. So whatever you do in world, whatever you create in world is instantly transmitted to anyone else watching. There's all kinds of different communication channels you can use, whether it's chat or IM or the voice client, so you can talk to people. The voice client is localized, or spatialized rather, so that means if someone's standing behind you and talking, you hear it back here. Beats the pants off of any conference call you've ever been in. It's very neat. The thing that makes Second Life different from a lot of other up-and-coming virtual world type offerings is that we have a really robust, huge community and growing community in all kinds of different areas, whether it's education or content makers or entertainers, all kinds of things. And everyone who comes into Second Life is immediately enfranchised with the tools of creation. So they are able to create buildings, clothes, hair, documents, stream media of music or movies or machinima that they've made into Second Life to share with anyone in the world who can log in, who's logged into their location. Residents own what they create. You know, your IP is yours. And that enables a fully functioning microeconomy in Second Life. So people use real dollars to buy in-world currency and then are able to trade that in-world currency for goods and services and then cash that out into real dollars again. And then I already talked about the communication pieces. Just a point of clarification, while a lot of the technology did develop out of the gaming industry, Second Life is not a game. There are games inside of Second Life, but it itself is a world. And what do people do there? I already hit on a couple of things. They do what we're doing now. They go to conferences. I love that image on the left there because it shows people in Second Life watching the streaming video of a conference, and then somebody at the conference is in Second Life watching himself at the conference in Second Life. But it allows you to transcend all of the normal physical barriers of the world and be able to get to places you wouldn't normally be able to get to for financial reasons, for physical reasons, whatnot. People are able to build. We also have a scripting language in Second Life, so you're able to animate an effect to the world, not just create cool things and pretty pictures. And of course, it's a huge platform for social networking and whatever might come of that socializing. Some of our demographics, just really quickly, we're enormously international. So we have, I think, actually at this point, closing in on closer to 70% international participation from our residents. We skew a bit older than a lot of the other MMO type things online right now as far as who the participants are. And we also have a lot of women who are not only early adopters of the platform, but very successful in-world business people, which is pretty cool. So just really quickly, I'm going to slam through some of these numbers to give you a perspective on what we're talking about when we talk about how this thing is being used right now. Our peak concurrency is about 65,000 people online, 779,000 active users in the last 7 days, 13.2 million total accounts. This is the number I love, 30.7 million user hours per month. That's a lot of attention. As far as the land mass of Second Life, at this point it's about the size of LA. And that equals about 18,000 regions, what we call regions or simulators. What are people doing there? We already talked about content creation a bit. 100 terabytes of user-created data, and that's increasing by about 15 terabytes per month. 15 million concurrent scripts running, 16,000 plus events per day. Those are just the ones that are registered on the Linden Lab event calendar. There's tons of other ones. 19 million user-to-user Linden dollar transactions per month. That means that in world there are 19 million transactions between you and you and you and you and you and you happening each month. And that works out to, on a day-to-day basis, $294,000 US traded on the Lindex each day. The Lindex is the currency trading site that you use to either buy or sell your lindens to other residents. So depending on where you work or what kind of data centers you might be involved in and so forth, those numbers might actually seem kind of small. And I just want to say that, to put this in context, this is really early days of a very disruptive and interesting technology. And the way that I explain it to people, you know, the sort of like Thanksgiving dinner, trying to tell grandma what the hell it is I do, is that it's sort of like the early days of the web. You know, think 1994, where people are, you know, you're sitting down at a cafe, you're trying to load the Louvre site, you know, and it takes 18 minutes to get the 5 pictures, and you know, whoever's sitting there with you is saying, well, kind of shiny, yeah, but what does it do? You know, what's it good for? And, you know, we have a bit of resistance at this stage of the technology development on that level of, you know, hey, it looks pretty cool, that's pretty neat, you can do all this stuff, but not really sure how it applies to me yet. Well, it will, I guarantee. It's not just a world, it's a development platform. We believe that the Second Life Grid platform is going to be the basis of a lot of the open protocols that are going to connect the virtual worlds and this 3D web that I've been talking about. And one of the ways that we've started seeding that work is by open sourcing our client, the Second Life Viewer, which lives on your desktop and allows you to run Second Life. And we did that a year ago. We've been growing the community slowly and surely, and growing the tools and technology we need to enfranchise and enable better community development as we go along. But at this point, we've had really good community participation in terms of patch submissions, in terms of feature submissions, a very active mailing list, lots of bug tracking and that kind of stuff too. Some of the really cool things that are happening from the community side, there are about 10 to 12 popular viewers that we know about, community edition viewers that really, you know, come up on the radar. There are ports underway to Debian and Fedora. Our Linux viewer is now in beta and will be moving through to the next stage very quickly. Our open source initiative has also allowed a lot of external development among other groups, such as universities, and also even proprietary companies who actually want to release some of their development into open source. So we've been able to encourage more open source development from people who would otherwise not even think about doing that. We also participate by pushing other open source things besides just our client. We put a bunch of Python libraries out that we've developed internally. And our community also works on things like OpenAL and OpenJPEG. So what's next? Well, I already started talking about this travel between virtual worlds. In other words, interoperability. So one of the other things that we've been working on that I started to mention before is something that we call the Open Grid Protocols, and a group that we call the Architecture Working Group. And so we've convened formally twice now. Members of this group include people from IBM, Motorola, things like that, as well as other open source initiatives around the virtual world space, including OpenSim, if you're familiar with them, or RealExtend out of Scandinavia. And what we're doing is, in a public, collaborative manner, writing the protocols that are going to allow all of these different spaces that are already being developed to share appropriately a lot of their data. And that appropriate part is probably the hardest part of this to nail. So if you're at all interested in that, please check out our website and come and help us out. And on that note, this is my recruiting slide. If you haven't been into Second Life yet, check it out. Whatever it is that you do, you may very well find a way to do it better through this platform, or in addition to the other ways that you do. Lend a hand with our open source project. So we have that website down there, secondlifegrid.net. You can go to our open source page and find out where all of our resources are, our documentation in the wiki, how to get on our mailing list, how to use our patch submission system, etc. And then we're hiring in all areas. I actually have some printed out a customer data center Linux engineer position that we have available right now. So if you're interested, I have that printed out here. And I think with that, I'm ready to take some questions. Hi.
How much are you consuming per client? I mean, is it something where you can run on the local plan and not saturate the whole thing?
I can barely hear the last part of that, but the first part was bandwidth. It totally depends on where you are in world. And it's I could say it's getting better and getting worse at the same time. So we're finding better and better ways of optimizing the client so that it's not, you don't need such an incredibly thick connection to have really good performance. But in other ways, it will always be a struggle because people are creating more and more interesting, complicated, bandwidth huggy kind of content in world. So it's sort of this tango that you get into between the technology and the content creators.
Go back to the mic.
Sorry.
Hear you. Any other questions?
Sorry.
And for those of you on the web,
Hi.
When you're developing, is it all proprietary formats, or are there some standards in place around the 3D web?
So our client is open source. It's out under GPL. So I'm not sure. Could you expand on your question?
Are there competing clients or other networks that, the same way that there's HTML as a standard for developing for the web, are these standards driven, or are they?
So there is no official standard yet. That's what we're working on, and hopefully also working with a lot of the other people who are doing other kinds of worlds, other kinds of clients, other kinds of server structures, et cetera. I mean, we don't want to be these balkanized states. That's not going to help anybody, right? So some of those folks have come and joined this effort already. There are other similar efforts under different headings, but exactly what you're after, I think, is what we're in the very early stages of trying to make happen in a very grassroots way. Yeah.
Any other questions? Oh, we got one.
This is okay, not that close to my mouth. An interesting issue for me is how people choose to make these currencies that aren't government-related currencies, such as the Second Life currency. How do you guys decide how many to print? How much money to make?
How much money to make? Is that the question?
How much of the currency to create so that players can trade or use for their other things and stuff like that?
I don't work on that part. So I don't have a specific answer for you, but I know that the people who do work on that, their primary concern is economic stability. You know, we don't want to cause anything to happen that would make the people who depend on this currency, all of the in-world content creators and business peoples and customers of those people, unable to do what they want to do. So,
do you know if they're trying to keep it stable to something like the dollar or stable independent of something like the dollar?
What they're pegging it at, I couldn't say particularly. Yeah. We have a lot of financial data about what happens in world on our website. So if you go to secondlife.com, there's no mystery about it. Go check out the graphs, the tables. They're updated constantly. Any other questions?
Keeping in the theme of the financial stuff here, have you been dealing with perhaps unwanted attentions from government tax authorities that somehow think this should be taxed or something?
I wouldn't call it unwanted. I'd call it inevitable. I mean, yeah, inevitable. So we're just another piece of the internet, and the same kinds of issues that the government is having with catching up to what the internet is and how they're going to take their slice of it is going to relate to us too. For example, I don't know how many of you are familiar with the European VAT tax. We had to implement that for our European customers this summer to make sure that they were getting their slice, and that was really difficult in terms of our customers being mad at us for doing that. You know, we're a law-abiding company, we have to. And we're happy to. But on the government note, I don't know if any of you caught that our CEO recently testified in front of Congress last week before last. That's on the web too if you want to check it out. It was the telecommunications group brought us in as not as an informational session with a bunch of other people to talk so that they could better understand what the technology is coming down the pike and be more prepared rather than reactive to what that means. And that was actually a really fantastic experience for everybody. I think they were glad to have us, and we were glad to be there.
Any other questions? I guess I have a question. What about, I'll ask mine first. What about like hackers on Second Life? You know, nuclear bombs and things.
Griefers. People in thongs, yeah.
What are you guys doing to prevent those kind of attacks again?
So lots of different things, which are typical for pretty much anything that involves socializing on the web. So we try to build better and better tools for estate managers, people who own that land where that attack might be happening, to be able to mitigate it or prevent people they think are suspicious or unwelcome or unsavory from being in that space. So giving the appropriate people the tools and the decision-making power to decide what they think is appropriate in their space rather than us deciding for them. But we do also have, obviously, terms of service. We have a very robust and well-adopted community standards practice. And then we, as Linden Lab, also have an abuse response team, a governance team. So when someone's in World and something is happening to them that they don't like, they can submit an abuse report, and our team responds to that within the terms of our service agreement and then within the terms of our community standards. And there was somebody back there.
Could you describe your server infrastructure? And the second question is, do you support like a full physics model with the client, or is it just kind of
Havoc 4, which just came out actually, and it's fantastic. I personally cannot accurately describe our server infrastructure because I don't work on that side and I'm not a developer. However, if you go in World to our open source island called Hippotropolis, because the hippo is the unofficial mascot of Second Life, long story, we actually have a slide deck presentation right there where you can go and look at how all of this stuff works together. It's also on our wiki in greater or lesser amounts of detail, just depending on what we've gotten to as far as documentation. We're hiring documentation writers. So I'm sorry I can't answer that more specifically, but I also have my cards up here, so if any of you have more specific questions that you'd like me to get back to you later or connect you with the person who can answer them, I'm happy to do that. Anybody else? Cool. Well, I'm going to throw the machinima back up on here in case you want to take a look at that while the next person's getting ready. But thank you for being here, and I guess that's it. Thanks.